Welcome to the debate. Imagine holding a raw, uncut diamond in the palm of your hand. You're likely looking at a piece of crystallized carbon that was forged in a subterranean hellscape. And this happened billions of years before the first dinosaur even took a breath.
Right. It's a staggering thought.
It really is. Because when we try to conceptualize the sheer scale of our planet's history, which is about 4.54 billion years, the human brain essentially it short circuits. We simply didn't evolve to comprehend a span of time that vast.
No, not at all.
So to even begin to grasp it, we look for a map. And today, we are examining a very specific, utterly fascinating map. It's a timeline outlining Earth's entire 4.54 billion year history, plotting the formation of world-famous diamond deposits alongside major biological and geological milestones.
Yeah. And I have to say, it is a remarkable piece of source material. Frankly, it's a brilliantly constructed visual narrative. It attempts to distill, deep time into something a human mind can actually digest. Because it places these glittering stones, objects we typically just associate with modern jewelry or, commerce, right next to the primordial emergence of life and the catastrophic death of the dinosaurs. It forces you to look at a diamond and realize it's a passenger from a completely different era of the planet.
Exactly. But that specific pairing, placing a billion-year-old rock right next to a biological event like a mass extinction, it creates this profound intellectual tension.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to our central question today. Does this timeline primarily present a geological, abiotic narrative where biological life is merely an inconsequential byproduct, or does it implicitly reveal that biological milestones are the essential framework required to give deep time any actual meaning?
It's the classic tension between the stage and the players, really. And I have to say, the material gives us plenty of ammunition to argue both sides.
It certainly does. So, in our discussion today, I will argue for the geological supremacy framework based on the timeline's explicit text, while you will argue for the biological anchoring framework based on the timeline's structural and visual reliance on life events.
That's right, and I'm really looking forward to unpacking this, because I think the visual design of this timeline subverts its own written text in a brilliant, almost subversive way.
Well, let's lay our cards on the table. When I approach this material, I see a clear, undeniable thesis of geological supremacy. The timeline's core narrative is that Earth's true, enduring story is written in stone, completely indifferent to the fragility and the fleeting nature of life.
Indifferent is a strong word, but go on.
Well, we don't have to guess at this intention because the material explicitly states it. Down at the bottom of the graphic, it literally says, in this vast timeline, human history is a footnote. And it goes on to declare, even the dinosaurs are a recent event.
Sure, the text does say that.
Right. But the ultimate thesis is right there too. Diamonds are the Earth's oldest words. When we look at the very beginning of the timeline, the first specific milestone plotted after the Earth's formation is the oldest diamonds at the Ekati and Diavik deposits up in Canada. These were forged deep within the Earth's mantle, long before the emergence of even simple single-celled life. This proves that the planet's story began with and is sustained by these staggering abiotic processes. I know a lot of people instinctively view Earth's history through this anthropocentric or biocentric lens, and I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective.
Okay, let's hear it.
Life is just a surface condition. The real mechanics of the planet, the true engines of deep time, they're happening hundreds of miles below the crust, immortalized in crystal carbon.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Please do.
Despite the text's incredibly poetic claims about stone being the primary storyteller, the timeline itself fundamentally contradicts that premise. It relies entirely on biological evolution to contextualize time for the reader.
Contextualize, sure, but...
Wait, hear me out. If you actually look at the visual structure of the material, it uses life to mark almost every single major era. We see the emergence of simple single-celled organisms. We see the Cambrian explosion of complex life, which, by the way, is beautifully represented visually by a trilobite.
Right, the little fossil illustration.
Exactly. And we see the extinction of the dinosaurs, anchored by a really dramatic illustration of a T-Rex. If we remove these biological markers, what would we actually have? The Kimberley, Cullinan, Venetia, and Argyle diamonds would just be, they'd be floating data points in a conceptual void.
I wouldn't call it a void.
They're just rocks forming in darkness. Without those biological chapters to anchor them, the timeline loses all historical meaning. So the narrative might claim geology is supreme in its footnotes, but the scaffolding holding that entire narrative up for the reader is entirely biological.
Well, it's an interesting structural observation. But if we're going to talk about scaffolding, let's look at the literal foundation of the planet.
Okay.
Let's start right at the beginning of the timeline, focusing on that immense gap between the Earth's formation, which is at 4.54 billion years ago, and the first biological event. The timeline deliberately places the oldest diamonds at Akkadian Diavik in this massive silent void before genetic material even existed.
It does plot them very early, yes. But we have to remember how hostile that early environment was.
Exactly. It was hostile to life, but it was perfect for geology. If you're listening to this, you might be wondering, well, how does a diamond survive billions of years of tectonic violence? It's because of where they form.
Deep down.
Right. These Akkadian Diavik diamonds, they didn't form on the surface. They were forged in what geologists call cratonic roots.
Ah, yes.
A craton is essentially the ancient, frozen, impenetrable heart of a continent. It pushes deep down into the Earth's mantle, like an iceberg made of rock. And down there, the heat and pressure are so intense that carbon atoms are forced into an incredibly dense, stable crystalline lattice.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And the fact that the timeline chooses to mark the formation of these specific Canadian diamonds before biology enters the picture, that is the ultimate proof that geology is the primary actor here. The Earth was actively writing its history, applying unfathomable heat and pressure to carbon deep within its cratonic roots, long before any cells started replicating. Geology doesn't need biology to exist. Biology requires a stable geological foundation to even begin.
Look, I won't dispute the sequence of events. The Earth obviously predates life, but I want you to notice what happens immediately after those Canadian diamonds on the timeline.
Okay.
The graphic doesn't just list an endless string of subsequent rocks. It explicitly notes the emergence of simple single-celled life, and then, crucially, it plots the oxygenation of atmosphere. And look at where it places the Kimberley diamonds, right between these two monumental biological shifts.
But the Kimberley diamonds are still purely geological formations.
Yes, they are. But the timeline is framing those geological events within a biological context, and for good reason. Let's talk about the mechanism behind that oxygenation of atmosphere marker, what scientists call the Great Oxidization Event.
Right. Cyanobacteria.
Exactly. It wasn't caused by a volcano or a shifting tectonic plate. It was driven entirely by simple life forms, specifically cyanobacteria photosynthesizing in the ancient oceans. Biology fundamentally altered the chemistry of the entire planet.
It changed the surface, yes.
It changed everything. To give our listeners a mental image, imagine early Earth as a sealed terrarium. Suddenly, a single type of tiny plant inside that terrarium begins pumping out what was, at the time, a highly toxic and reactive gas, oxygen. These bacteria pumped out so much oxygen that it literally rusted the iron right out of the oceans.
The banded iron formations.
Yes! The oceans were full of dissolved iron, and the biological oxygen bonded with it, creating heavy rust that sank to the seafloor, which formed those banded iron formations we still mine today. So to call biology a mere surface condition completely ignores the fact that life literally dictated the atmospheric envelope and the chemical makeup of the rocks under which the rest of these geological events occurred. You cannot separate the rock record from the biological record here.
I admit the Great Oxidation Event is a planetary scale shift, and the chemistry you just described is, honestly, it's fascinating. But I have to push back on the idea that it alters the primary narrative.
How does it not?
Because it changed the atmospheric composition and it rusted the ocean floor, yes, but it didn't change the mantle. It didn't alter the tectonic forces driving the cratons where the Kimberley diamonds were being forged. Think about how those diamonds actually get to the surface.
Through kimberlite pipes.
Exactly. You mentioned they are framed by these events, but the Kimberley diamonds were brought up by Kimberley pipes. A Kimberley pipe is essentially a subterranean volcanic elevator. It's a specialized eruption that starts deep in the mantle and blasts upward through the crust at supersonic speeds.
Supersonic, yeah.
Right, because if it went slowly, the diamonds would depressurize and turn into worthless graphite. But it erupts so fast it traps them in their crystalline state. That is pure, unadulterated planetary power. So think of Earth's history like a grand theater.
Okay, a theater.
The stage and the foundation, representing the diamonds and the deep geology, were built and set in stone long before the actors, meaning the single-celled life, even arrived. The stage itself is the true subject of the play, not the fleeting performances on it. The cyanobacteria might have painted the sky blue, but they didn't build the theater. And the timeline acknowledges this by maintaining its drumbeat of subterranean consistency.
I understand the theater analogy. It paints a great picture, but, I mean, if the play is only about the stage, it's a remarkably dull production.
I don't know. Supersonic magma elevators sound pretty exciting to me.
Fair enough. But frankly, that subterranean stage didn't stay hidden forever. The oxygen those bacteria pumped out literally altered the chemistry of the rocks on the surface, which inevitably forces us into the middle of the timeline, where things get intensely complex. We transition from this quiet, slow geological drumbeat into an absolute explosion of activity.
You're referring to the Cambrian explosion.
Exactly. And look at how the timeline handles it. It doesn't just jump to the next rock arbitrarily. It deliberately pairs the Cullinan and Venetia diamonds just before the Cambrian explosion proliferation of complex life. And then it places the Argyle diamonds right alongside this biological explosion, marking it visually with a trilobite.
A very nice drawing of a trilobite, yes.
It is. But let's dig into what the Cambrian explosion actually means mechanically. For billions of years, life was microscopic and soft-bodied. Then, suddenly, well, in geological terms anyway, there was a massive evolutionary arms race. Life didn't just multiply, it weaponized.
Mm-hmm. Organisms developed hard calcium carbonate shells, articulated limbs, bilateral symmetry, and perhaps most importantly, vision. They started hunting each other.
By explicitly mapping the diamonds against the Cambrian explosion, the timeline is using life's sudden, dramatic complexity as the climax of this era. It's signaling to the reader, pay attention, this is when the story gets dynamic. The geological rocks are paced to match the biological drama.
But are they paced to match the biological drama, or are they proving that the biological drama is fundamentally irrelevant to the planet's core functions?
Irrelevant? Come on.
I mean it. While your trilobites are crawling around the ocean floor, evolving intricate eyes and articulated armor, the planet is just continuing its relentless, indifferent geological processes. Look at the subsequent markers on the timeline. Right after the Cambrian explosion, we have the Victor diamonds, and then we have the staggering geological event marked Atlantic Ocean Opens.
Which is a significant tectonic event, I agree.
It's more than significant, it's practically incomprehensible in its scale. The opening of the Atlantic Ocean isn't just a body of water filling a gap. It involves the supercontinent of Pangaea physically ripping apart.
Right.
We are talking about plate tectonics, driven by convection currents in the mantle. Superheated, semi-solid rock churning thousands of miles down, acting like a massive conveyor belt that generates enough force to split a continent in half and shift millions of square miles of crust.
It's a huge release of energy.
Exactly. This demonstrates that massive planet-altering geological shifts continue unabated, completely indifferent to the trilobites or whatever biological arms race is happening in the shallows above. The timeline includes the Cambrian explosion, sure, but it brackets it with the Cullinan and Victor diamonds, and it is ultimately dwarfed by the sheer energetic scale of an ocean opening. The Earth, as an engine, simply does not care about the trilobite.
The Earth as an inanimate object doesn't care. No, it has no agency. But a timeline is a tool for human understanding.
Right.
I have to question the utility of a purely geological timeline as you are conceptualizing it. If we only cared about the physics of mantle convection opening oceans and the crystallization of carbon under pressure, Why include the trilobite at all? Why not just plot the rocks?
Well, to show what was happening concurrently, it gives a sense of scale.
But I don't think it's just concurrent. I think it's foundational to our comprehension. Claiming the diamonds are the only real words of Earth's story is like claiming the canvas and frame are more important than the painting itself.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Think about it. Sure, without the canvas, the painting wouldn't exist. Yet, whenever you want to explain where you are on the canvas, you only ever point to the painted figures, the biological events, to make sense of it. The timeline uses the Cambrian explosion because without it, the Argyle and Victor diamonds are just isolated geological trivia. Biology provides the necessary scale of time and progression.
I see your point, but
It provides the narrative arc. If you tell someone a diamond is 500 million years old, their eyes just glaze over. But if you tell them it formed while the very first creatures with eyes were hunting in primordial seas, suddenly they understand the depth of time. Biology translates geology into something meaningful.
Your canvas and painting analogy is beautiful. It really is. But it reveals a fundamental bias.
A bias?
Yes, it assumes the painting is meant for an audience to appreciate its figures. The timeline's explicit text completely rejects that arrogance. Let's look at how the discussion of the Atlantic Ocean opening flows directly into the final era of this timeline, because it forces us to confront the material's most provocative textual claim.
You mean the text at the bottom regarding human history?
Coffee Fontaine diamonds mapped right before the extinction of dinosaurs. And beneath that, the text reads, "Even the dinosaurs are a recent event."
Mm-hmm.
This is a direct admonition of the reader for overvaluing biological majesty. Think about this mechanically. The dinosaurs ruled this planet for roughly 165 million years. To a human, 165 million years feels like an absolute eternity.
Entire mountain ranges rise and fall in that time.
Exactly. But the timeline reduces their entire existence and their spectacular extinction to a minor, late-stage blip compared to the billions of years of continuous diamond formation we've just tracked. This is the ultimate proof that the biological perspective is myopic. The Jaggers Fontaine and Coffee Fontaine diamonds were forming while dinosaurs walked the Earth. And those diamonds remain pristine, impossibly hard, and unchanged, while the dinosaurs are reduced to dust and fossils. The stone endures, the biology perishes.
I hear the text saying that, and I agree the timescale is profoundly humbling. To realize the reign of the dinosaurs is just a sliver of the planet's life is staggering. But I have to actively challenge the contradiction embedded in the visual layout of this document.
What contradiction?
If the dinosaurs are merely a recent, insignificant event, a blip, as you say, why does the timeline use the T-Rex and the asteroid extinction event as the final, dramatic visual anchor before present day?
Well, because it's a globally known marker. It's an easy reference point for the reader to orient themselves.
But it's doing so much more heavy lifting than just acting as a reference point. It's serving as a narrative climax. Notice what it doesn't do. It doesn't use the formation of the Himalayas, which was a massive tectonic event happening around the same time. It doesn't use the creation of the Grand Canyon. It uses a biological apocalypse.
An apocalypse caused by a rock from space, I might add.
The asteroid impact is a geological event, yes, but its importance on this timeline is derived entirely from the fact that it wiped out 75% of plant and animal life. The timeline needs the drama of biological extinction to give weight to the present day. It leverages the emotional resonance of the T-Rex's demise, the sudden catastrophic end of complex, dominant life, to make the reader actually feel the passage of time.
I think you're projecting a bit of emotion onto the map.
No, I'm just reading its visual language. If geology were truly supreme and biology just a fleeting performance on the stage, the visual climax wouldn't be a dead dinosaur. It would be a mountain. It would be a rock.
Yeah.
But it isn't. The visual gravity of the timeline pulls inexorably toward life and death.
That is a very compelling observation about the visual hierarchy, I'll admit. And I'll concede that putting a T-Rex next to the word extinction creates a striking visual that draws the human eye much faster than a shifting tectonic plate.
Thank you.
But I keep coming back to the literal words printed on the page. The text tells us that humans are a footnote. It is actively trying to push us away from our biological narcissism. It wants us to stare at these diamonds and recognize that the Earth was complete without us and will endure long after us.
A footnote, yes. I don't disagree with the text's assertion that we are a tiny, almost imperceptible fraction of the timeline, but we're the ones reading the page. You can't write a story about deep time without using the language of life to make it legible to a living organism.
So you're arguing that the timeline's true meaning isn't just in the text, but is actually found in the tension between what it explicitly says and how it visually shows it?
Exactly. The text preaches geological supremacy, demanding we respect the stone, but the map itself practices biological anchoring. It knows we can only comprehend the stone through the lens of life.
Well, let's synthesize where we've arrived, because we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from the hostile early eons right up to the present day. My view remains anchored in the explicit thesis of the material. The diamonds, from those ancient Akkadi and Diavic formations that formed in the deep cratons long before the first cell divided, all the way to Jagersfontein, are the enduring oldest words written in stone. They represent a geological narrative of staggering pressure, subterranean consistency, and abiotic permanence that outlasts the violent opening of oceans and the catastrophic extinctions of life on the surface.
And my summary is that while those diamonds are undeniably ancient, breathtakingly durable, and geologically significant, they require a biological lexicon to be understood within a timeline. Without the emergence of simple life, the great oxidation event that radically altered the chemistry of our atmosphere, and the Cambrian explosion that populated those oceans with complex creatures, those words in stone would be an unreadable, abstract language. Life provides the essential translation, the structure, and the visual milestones that actually allow a human mind to comprehend a 4.54 billion-year history.
It is a profound disagreement on the mechanics of history, really, and how we ascribe meaning to time. However, I think we both find incredibly strong common ground in the timeline's ability to humble the human perspective.
Absolutely.
Whether you prioritize the relentless slow march of tectonic plates, kimberlite eruptions, and mantle convection, or you focus on the fragile, chaotic, and beautiful evolution of life, looking at a 4.54 billion-year timeline unequivocally reduces human history to a mere footnote.
It is a deeply sobering reminder of our absolute infancy as a species. A few 100,000 years of Homo sapiens is practically invisible on this scale, regardless of which framework you use to read the deep time map. We are just arriving at the very edge of the present-day marker, a fraction of a millimeter on the grand scale of the canvas.
There is clearly so much more to explore regarding how we define and interact with deep time, and how we tell the story of our own planet. We leave you, the listener, to formulate your own conclusion based on the evidence we've unpacked today. When you look back at the vast expanse of Earth's history, do you view its story primarily through the enduring, silent permanence of the deep stone, or through the vibrant, evolving, and tragic surface of life?
It's the ultimate question of what gives history its meaning.
As we wrap up today, think back to that grand theater we mentioned earlier. The foundation is set miles deep in crystal, immovable and ancient. But the stage above is teeming with a biological performance that has dramatically shaped the atmosphere, rusted the oceans, and altered the world as we know it. Which part of the theater truly defines the play? That's the question that lingers. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.